Okay, so here are the practice problems. You should do them before you listen to the video, and this should just be used to check to see if you did them right and to see explanations. So the very first one, you're multiplying. So you're going to multiply 8 times 3, which is 24. And then you're multiplying your exponents. So you're multiplying 10 to the 4th times 10 to the 6th. And exponent rules say since 10 to the 4th and 10 to the 6th, since they have a base of 10, all you have to do is combine their exponents so it's 10 to the 10th. So now this is not in scientific notation, so you have to adjust the exponent. So you're moving the decimal point back 1, and it becomes 2.4. Now that would be times 10 to the 1st power, and then you're combining it with times 10 to the 10th power to give us a final answer of 2.4 times 10 to the 11th power. The next one's a little bit tricky. It's best to start with flipping it. So if you look, that outside exponent is telling you to flip it. So it's going to be 0.6 times 10 to the 2nd over 1.2 times 10 to the negative 5th. And then when you flipped it, that changes the outside exponent to a positive 2. Now, the next thing, before squaring everything on the inside of the parentheses, it's best to fully simplify the whole inside. So since this is division, we're actually just going to divide 0.6 divided by 1.2. So now just review of dividing decimals. When you're putting 1.2 into 0.6, the thing you're dividing by has a decimal in it. And so the way that we do that is we have to slide the decimal point to the right. Or it's like multiplying the top, the numerator and the denominator by 10, right? You need to make this so that you're sliding the decimal point over. And so then it becomes basically 12 into 6, right? Or another way to look at it is 0.6 over 1.2 like this. Move the decimal point over. If you move it over in the denominator, you have to also move it over in the numerator. So 0.6 over 1.2 is equal to 6/12. And 6/12 you know is 1/2, right? And 1/2 is 0.5. So 0.6 divided by 1.2 is actually 0.5. So you're actually going through and you're dividing, okay? Times 10, because this is division, the same base on the 10, you subtract the exponents. So it becomes 2 minus negative 5. Let me say that again. 2 minus negative 5 is the same as 2 plus 5, which is 7. And so then this whole thing becomes to the 2nd power. So now you can square it. 0.5 squared is basically the same thing as doing 5 times 5 and sliding the decimal point back 2 places. So it becomes 0.25. So 5 squared is 0.25 times 10 to the 14th. We multiply the exponents there because you're bringing the 2 in. And now that's not in scientific notation, so you have to slide the decimal point over, so it becomes 2.5. Since I'm sliding the decimal point over to the right, and that's a small number, I'm making a small number bigger, moving it over 1 place to the right, you're adding negative 1, or you're subtracting 1. So that's times 10 to the 13th, because 2.5 times 10 to the negative 1st, combined with 10 to the 14th, becomes 10 to the 13th. All right, so now let's take a look at number 3. Number 3 is a little bit more straightforward. Slide this over a little bit so I've got some room. It's just a division problem, and the parentheses that are there, they don't really mean anything. They're just separating the top from the bottom. So I'm just going to follow my division rules. I'm going to do 0.48 divided by 0.6. So quick review of how to do 0.48 divided by 0.6, just like the other problem. 0.48 divided by 0.6. You can't divide by a decimal, or you can divide by a decimal, obviously, but what we're going to do to make it easier is we're going to slide the decimal point over to the right one, and then we're going to divide it over to the right one here. So then that's the same as 4.8 divided by 6, okay? And so 6 going into 4.8 is essentially the same as 6 going into 48, and 6 goes into 48 8 times, but since it's 4.8, you bring that decimal point up, it actually becomes 0.8. So 0.48 divided by 0.6 is 0.8. And if you're struggling with that, maybe you want to review how to divide by a decimal. Look online, maybe there's another video that kind of explains that again. And then we're going to do 10 to the 5th divided by 10 to the 4th. Because you have a base of 10, all you have to do is subtract the exponents. And 5 minus 4 is 1. Now again, this final answer is not actually in scientific notation because the decimal point's in the wrong spot. So 0.8 in scientific notation becomes 8.0 times 10 to the negative first. And so you're basically adding negative 1 to 1, or you're subtracting 1. Because 0.8 has negative 1 exponent on it, you're combining that to get 0. So 1 minus 1, or 1 plus negative 1, does give us 0. And there's your answer. And moving right along to number 4. So now you have an exponent on the outside of parentheses. So what you're doing now is you're squaring everything on the inside of parentheses. Now, some of you may have noticed that the inside is technically not in scientific notation. If you wanted to adjust that to 1.2 times 10 to the 7th first, you can, but I typically just do the problem and adjust at the very end. So I'm just going to square the 12. So 12 squared gives me 144 times 10. Well, I multiply exponents here. 6 times 2 is 12. When you're bringing an outside exponent in, you multiply the exponents. Now I'm just going to adjust it. And so I'm going to move my decimal point over 2 places to the left to make that 1.44. So that's times 10 to the second, right? Because that's a big number. If you're making a big number smaller, then the exponent's going to get bigger. So it's 1.44 times 10 to the 14th. All right, the next one. Number 5, do the inside of the parentheses first, because if you bring the exponent in, you're going to get 6 to the 3rd, which is 216, and negative 2 to the 3rd, which is 8, and then you're going to have 216 over 8, and you're going to have to divide that. It's a lot easier to just divide 6 divided by negative 2. So always simplify the inside of your parentheses first if you can. So 6 divided by negative 2 is negative 3. So inside my parentheses, I have negative 3 times 10 to the, subtract your exponents. 8 minus 2 is 6. Then take everything to the 3rd power. Negative 3 to the 3rd power is negative 27. 10 to the 6th to the 3rd power, multiply your exponents. It's 10 to the 18th. Then adjust your exponent. Negative 27 becomes negative 2.7. The absolute value of negative 27 is 27. That's a big number. It has a positive exponent on it. So that would be like negative 2.7 times 10 to the positive first. So you're adding 1 to 18 to get 10 to the 19th. All right? All right, number 6. You're squaring this. Just square everything. So negative 5 squared is 25. Negative times negative is a positive. Don't forget that. And then multiply your exponents. 10 to the negative 10th is what you would get there. Again, adjust your exponent, because 25 needs to be 2.5. And 2.5 times 10 to the 1st would be what 25 is equal to. So you're adding 1 to negative 10 to get 10 to the negative 9th. Because negative 10 plus 1 is negative 9. So when you make a big number smaller, you're adding a positive to the exponent. And when you're making a small number bigger, you're subtracting or adding a negative to the exponent. All right, so again, number 7, this is division. So 2.4 divided by 0.8, sorry. That's the same as, so 2.4 divided by 0.8. If you're moving the decimal point over, you have to do that in the top as well. So that's really the same as 24 divided by 8. And 24 divided by 8 is just 3. Okay, so 2.4 divided by 0.8 is 3. And then you're subtracting your exponents because it's division. And so it would be 5 minus negative 4. Not 5 minus 4, 5 minus negative 4, which is 5 plus 4, would be 9. And that is already in scientific notation. All right, so 8 and 9, you're basically going to simplify the top first and then the bottom and then do your division. So number 8 is just multiplication on the top. So I'm going to do 7 times 6 is 42 times 10, adding your exponents here. So 13 plus 15 is 38 on the top. over, there's nothing to do at the bottom except that it's 2 times 10 to the 7th. Now I'm going to divide. You can adjust the 42 times 10 to the 38th on the top first if you want, but I'm going to do that at the end. It's easier because then sometimes you might have to do it twice, and it's just easy to do it at the very end. So 42 divided by 2 is 21. Times 10, subtract your exponents, so you get times 10 to the 31st, because 38 minus 7 is 31. And then again, you're moving the decimal point back 1, so that would be 2.1 times 10 to the 1st. So you're adding 1 to 31 to give us 32. So it's 2.1 times 10 to the 32nd. All right, let's take a look at number 9. Number 9, just like the top on number 8, you just multiply straight across. 9 times 5 is 45. Add your exponents, times 10 to the negative 95th. Now the bottom has a little 4 on the outside, so now you have to take everything on the bottom to the 4th power. So 3 to the 4th power, 3 times 3 is 9, and another 3 times 3 is 9, and 9 times 9 is 81. That's how I do that in my head. Times 10, bring in the 4 to the 10, which makes that 40. So now this one's a little bit trickier because 45 divided by 81, off the top of our head, we probably don't know that. But we could look at it like a fraction. So I'm going to write this down at the bottom. 45 over 81 reduces to 5/9. And 5/9 is 0.5 repeating. So this is going to be a repeating decimal. So anything that ends in 9, if you didn't know 0.5 over 9 was 5 repeating, 1/9 is 1.1 repeating, 2/9 is 0.2 repeating, 3/9 is 0.3 repeating, and 3/9 again, remember, reduces to 1/3, and 1/3 is also 0.3 repeating. So 4/9 would be 0.4 repeating, and so on. And so that's just trivia for you. So then this would give us 0.5. So 45 divided by 81 is 0.5 repeating. Times 10, we are subtracting the exponents. Now be careful, it's negative 95. Minus 40, so it's going to get more negative, and we end up with negative 135. Now again, not in scientific notation, because we can't have 0.5 repeating, it has to be 5.5. So we're making a small number bigger, which means my exponent is going to get smaller. So you're going to add a negative 1 to negative 135, and it becomes negative 136, and that's your final answer. And if any of this, well, it actually should say 5.5, repeating, times 10 to the negative 136. If any of this was confusing, maybe go back and listen to the notes portion, because I go into a little bit more detail about how to change things that are not in scientific notation into scientific notation, and then why the rules are the way that they are. Good luck.